Hi there, Sugar Snaps. I've been sharing a series on creating your own drop spindles at home to spin your own yarn, and you can find in the description below the links to the other videos in this series. Today I want to share how to create a drop spindle using wooden circles. I have two different types I'll go over today. This one we'll use circles to stack to create a kind of mounded drop spindle whirl, and another version will use a wooden wheel. These wheels and the circles you can usually find at craft stores. They're easy to find in the wood piece section of the craft store. These wooden wheels are great. They're really fun to work with because you can stick the dowel right into them, glue them in place, and then you have a fun mini drop spindle to play around with when traveling or on the road or whatever. I'll go over the tools and materials with you right now, starting with the wooden wheels and the circles. This package came with a number of different sizes, which makes it easy to do the little mountain. You can also use two different sizes, use a larger size, glue those together, and then do a second size together to create just at least 3 layers of this. This is balsam wood, so creating 3 layers of the balsam wood to create your whirl head. Next, you'll want a wooden dowel, and I have a length here that is 9 inches that I'll use for the wooden wheel, and then another length that I'll cut down for the second wooden wheel that will be 10 inches, and I'll use a little hacksaw to shorten this down to 10 inches. You'll also want a ruler for measuring the length of your dowel as well as finding the center of your circles. I have a knife here. This is a little pocket knife that I can mark where the center circle is and then use it to kind of gouge a hole. We'll be using a drill bit to actually drill the hole into the circle, but you need to start the hole with something sharp so that the drill bit doesn't travel when you're drilling, or you'll end up having your hole off center, which means your whirl and your drop spindle will be wonky, and that makes for difficult spinning. So we want that center spot to be marked well using the knife. I have a piece of wood that I can drill into as kind of a stop guard when drilling. A number of 1/2 inch cup hooks. We'll need 1 per drop spindle. These are hooks that have a screw on one end and then a hook on the other that will go on the top of the drop spindle. If you want to paint your whirl, having some acrylic paints handy will be good to do that with, as well as some paint brushes and any other things you need to paint your whirl. I also have a paper plate to put the paint on. Couple pieces of sandpaper. This is 120 grit, so a medium fine grit. This we'll use to smooth out the circles as well as the dowel so that they're nice and smooth to the touch, so that the wood doesn't catch your wool or whatever fiber you're working with when you're spinning. Some wood glue, and I also have a paintbrush here that I'm using to apply the wood glue. Mine is very thick, so it's hard to get it out of the glue bottle, so I use the paintbrush. You don't need the paintbrush if yours is more viscous. And then the last step you'll be doing is using a clear wood finish. This is a satin, so it's slightly shiny, to spray your drop spindle down to seal it off, finish it off so that it's nice and shiny and smooth. You'll also want a drill and some drill bits. You want a drill bit that's the same size as your dowel. So I have a collection of drill bits here that I can go through and find one that's 1/4 inch thick, the same as my dowel. So we'll start with the wooden wheel dowel, or wooden wheel spindle, because it's fairly simple. We have a dowel. You'll sand this dowel down by placing your sandpaper on the table and sanding down the end. I just hold it like a pencil and sand back and forth until the end is nice and smooth, and then rotate it around as I sand down the edge to create a nice edge on that end. And then do the same thing for the other end. Okay, and then sand the length of the dowel down to smooth it down as well And this doesn't have to be a lot of sanding, just enough to smooth the wood and get any catches. Like so, and then wipe it down. The dowel is all smooth. We've wiped it down, and now the wheel is going to be placed onto your wooden dowel at about 1.5 inches from the top of the dowel, and then we'll glue that in place. So open up your glue. Again, you don't have to use a paintbrush. You can just squirt it on. But I'm going to apply some glue around where I want the wheel to go. So at 1.5 inches, and I'm eyeballing this, place a bit of glue all the way around at that space. And then slide the wheel up to meet where the glue is. And use your finger to wipe away any excess glue that comes out. And you want to fill any cracks around the wheel with glue so that it holds it in place. So I'll go in and apply more glue and kind of press it into the edges there, and then wipe it off. Okay, and then on the other side, do the same. Going around, filling the crack with some glue. And then wiping the glue off. Okay, and then you can set this aside by putting a book underneath and then a book on top to hold it in place so that it's raised up so that the wheel can dry in place. And once it's dry, we'll come back and we'll put the cup hook on. Follow the directions on the back of your glue bottle for the dry time. I'm going to let this dry for about 8 hours and then check it. It could dry for up to 24 hours before you use it. But we'll let it dry part of the way, add the cup hook, and then let it completely dry before we use it. Okay, so for the next whirl top, we're going to create a stack like this. And I have my baggie of circles here. So I'll pull out some circles and estimate decide which ones I want to use. So I'm creating a stack with concentric circles. So one circle inside of another. And you can decide how far up you want to go. You can do multiple of the same size to kind of raise it up a bit, or just do one of each size. I'll play around with the stacking until I'm happy with how that looks. And I think I want to go with this kind of a shape so that it raises up to create a nice angle here. Now, before I glue these pieces together, I'm going to go and sand the edges so that all of the edges are nice and smooth. Doing these individually is a lot easier than doing them once they're all glued together. So I suggest doing the sanding first. Once all of your pieces have been sanded and you've dusted them off, we're going to mark the center of the largest circle so that we know where to drill the hole. So place that in front of you on your work surface and grab your ruler and a pencil. Now, to find the center, there are several details in this process to keep in mind as you're doing this. So line up the ruler with the edge of the circle and create a line really gently. You don't want to create too dark of a mark on the wood. Create a line there, and then parallel to this line, we're going to create another mark, lining the ruler up with the other side of the circle, creating a line parallel. So we have two parallel lines in the center vicinity. Now we're going to connect the edge of each of those lines. So diagonally connect one edge with the other, and then put in a mark, and then again on the other side, edge to edge, diagonally. And where the two cross over here in the center, that is your center point. So keep this on the bottom of your stack so that you can see it when we go to drill the hole in your whirl. Now, if you want more detail in how to find the center of a circle with a little bit more visuals, go ahead and check out this video up here where I go over it in detail with darker lines so you can see the process. Okay, so we're going to glue our stack of circles together now. Using the wood glue, we're going to glue each of these pieces together. So again, putting the mark where we found the center on the bottom, and then putting glue on the bottom of each consecutive piece. So I'm going to paint on some glue to the bottom of this piece. I'm using Gorilla Wood Glue here. It's really thick, and I find that when it dries, it does well holding the pieces together, so I like using this, even though the application means using a paintbrush. Okay, now put this in the center and then move it around until you can see that around the edges is equal distance, and then gently press and kind of rotate to get the glue attached to the lower portion, and then recenter it like so, and then create your next stack, put glue on the bottom. And I'm not putting glue all the way around to the edges because it will squirt out a bit. So I'm leaving about 1/8 of an inch around the edges with glue in the center. Again, placing this on top, press down, give it a little bit of a rotation to attach the glue. And then the next circle. The reason I do a little bit of a rotation as I place the circle down, rotate it a little bit, is that it helps the wood glue to squish into the grains of the lower section of the wood so that it's connected to both the upper and lower pieces. And once you've placed all of your circles, you'll check it over to make sure everything's centered. All your circles line up and they haven't shifted in the process of stacking. Okay, so look at it up front. Do any rotations or movements now because the glue is still wet and you can still move things around. And then once it's situated the way you want it to be, set it aside and allow it to dry according to the instructions on your glue bottle. This one I'll allow to dry until it's firm to the touch, until the layers don't shift around. So I'll set this aside. Okay, now I'm going to show you the process of drilling the hole with this guy that I've previously glued together that's ready to go. So I have my marks on the back and I have the center marked. Grab a knife. When you're working with a blade like this or a pocket knife or any kind of knife, make sure that you follow knife safety Don't cut toward you. Make sure you know where the point is at all times. Don't run with your knife. All of the things that you learn when you first start using scissors. Don't come back to me complaining about chopped off fingers because you didn't use your knife well. Okay, so I have a pointy knife. I'm going to gouge into the center of this whorl, or where the mark is, so that I can start the hole for where the drill bit will go. I've found that when you're drilling into wood, especially this balsam wood, because it's so light, the drill bit likes to travel and you end up with a hole not in the center where you wanted it to be. So starting the hole with a little bit of, starting the hole with your knife helps that process. So placing the point of your knife right into the center, I'm going to rotate around and rotate a little bit, and then make sure I'm still in the center, rotate around again. My knife is very sharp, so I'm actually able to remove some of the material as I rotate. If yours is more dull, then just try to create a divot that the drill bit can live in when you first start out drilling. Okay, so I have a hole created in the center. That will be where the bit will sit. Now I have a 1/4 inch dowel here that I'm using for this drop spindle, and I want to find a 1/4 inch bit to create the hole for the dowel to go into. Once you find a 1/4 inch bit, go ahead and set up your drill. If you haven't used a drill before, there's a portion on your drill that rotates that will open up the orifice that you put the drill bit into. You rotate that and that will open up the end so that you can fit the bit into the drill, and then tighten by rotating the head that you rotated to open it, and tighten that down so it's nice and tight and it holds the drill bit in place between the little teeth here in the front. Now I have my wood block here as my stop, my drill stop, and I'll put my circle stack here onto the wood stop, and I'm going to drill my hole. Now, because I have a stack of circles here, you need to make sure that the hole not only goes straight into the center of the bottom circle, but that it comes out of the center of the top circle. First, create a little bit of a mark in the center of that circle. Because it's smaller, I can just guesstimate where that is, and create, again, like we did before, create a divot in the top of that circle. So now we have a place that the drill bit can sit in both sides, and we'll drill partway through one side and then drill from the other side and the goal is to meet up in the middle. So set your drill bit right into that center divot. Make sure it's set to actual drilling, and make sure that this portion of the drill is straight up and down. You want your drill bit to be straight up and down so that it goes straight through and not doesn't end up at an angle. So I'm going to hold my wheels and slowly drill into the circles for a portion, and then flip it over and do the other side, setting into this other divot that we created. And we made it through. So we have a hole through the center of our circles and a lot of sawdust. So clean off your workspace, and then we'll check to see if our bit and our dowel were the same size. Okay, so let's see if this bit worked for this dowel, and I'm thinking it was a little bit small, which is good because you can always size up more. If you don't want to start with too big of a bit because it could crack your circles and then you'd have to start over. So we'll just switch this bit out with a larger one. When you've gotten your hole large enough to fit your dowel through, you'll have some splintered edges and some places where there are hairs of the wood sticking out, and we want to sand that down so it's nice and smooth. So go into, grab your sandpaper and go around the circle, around the hole, and gently sand away any of those rough edges. And you can also pull off a small piece, I'm gonna tear off a small piece here and create a little tube that will fit into the hole by rolling some sandpaper up like so, and then stick it into your hole and rotate it around to smooth out the edges of the hole as well. And now we have a nice smooth hole side there. Okay, so the holes are all nice and clean. We'll wipe off the dust. Now is the perfect time to paint your whorl if you want to do that. I'm going to continue on with the plain wood, but you could use craft acrylic paint to paint that, or any other wood type paints, or you could stain it with a wood stain as well. We'll finish this off with a satin wood finish to seal off the wood and make sure that it's smooth and none of the fiber will catch on it when we are spinning. So go ahead and do that now if you want to go through that process. I will move on ahead with the construction of your spindle. Next, you'll want to sand down your spindle staff. I have a 10-inch length here I cut down to. The way I'm estimating that is basically by putting it onto the dowel, putting the whorl onto the dowel about 1.5 inches down from the top edge, and then estimating how long I want the length of the dowel to be. And I'm doing approximately 3 times of the width of your whorl. So this whorl is 3 inches across, and 9 inches will be that 3 times, but it seemed a little bit short, so I added an extra inch to just add a little bit more length. So that's kind of the proportions that I'm going for. If your circle is longer, or if your circle is bigger, then go for a longer and wider spindle by using a 3/8 inch wide dowel, or even a 1/2 inch wide dowel, and a longer length. So just gauge the proportions depending on what size of whorl you are using. So I'm going to sand this down. This is the same process as we did with the wooden wheel dowel. Now I'm going to place the dowel into the hole on the spindle. And again, like we did for the wooden wheel spindle, we're going to place glue at 1.5 inches around the dowel. And you want the glue to be the same width as your whorl, so that there's glue touching all the way around the inside of the whorl. So I'll put glue all the way around and then slide that up, and then fill any gaps with glue to hold that in place. Okay, and then again, using your finger, wipe around the edges to to remove any excess, and then flip it around and do the other side. And then wipe around the edges here as well. And then hold your dowel to the side and look at the side to position so that it's held even on both sides. Now go ahead and place a book underneath your dowel and on top of your dowel to hold this above the work surface so that it can dry like so. And once it's dry, in about 8 hours, we'll come back and put the cup hook on. When your drop spindle has dried, you can put in the cup hook. For these 1/4 inch dowels, I'm going to drill a hole into the end in order to place the cup hook. So I'm using a fine bit and I'm going to create a hole in the end. Like so. So I have a small hole in the top here, and then take your hook with this screwed end and screw it into the end of the dowel. So you end up with a nice hook on the end. Now to finish this drop spindle, I would tape off the hook on the end so that it doesn't get sprayed, and then take this outside, put it on a piece of paper or cardboard and spray it down with the clear finish to finish off the wood, and then allow that to dry, rotate it, spray the other side, finish it off, and follow the instructions on your clear finish can to completely allow it to dry. Probably don't use it for 24 hours until the finish is completely dry. And then you can go ahead and get started using your spindle. Be sure to check out this video on all of the different drop spindles that I've been sharing. I go over how to use each one, how to spin on each one, and the differences between them. And check the description below for all the other drop spindle videos that I've been sharing. Thanks so much for watching. Like this video if you found it helpful or interesting. I create lots of videos like this on my channel, and I'd love to share them with you. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.